The 16th of October, 1899, Volume 2. Waiting for Jesus, Jesus speaks about chastisements. This morning my sweet Jesus was not coming. I had not seen him since last night, when he showed himself with an appearance that moved one to pity and struck fear at the same time. He wanted to hide so as not to see the chastisements which he himself was sending over the people and the way in which he was to destroy them. Oh God, what a harrowing sight, never before seen. While waiting and waiting, in my interior I kept saying, how is it that he's not coming? Who knows whether he does not come because I do not conform to his justice? But how can I do this? It seems almost impossible for me to say fiat voluntas tua. Then again I kept saying, he's not coming because the confessor is not sending him to me. Now, while I was thinking of this, I just barely saw him, almost a shadow, and he told me, do not fear, the authority of priests is limited. According to the measure in which they are willing to pray me to come to you and to offer you as victim to make you suffer so that I may spare the people, so will I heal them and spare them in the act in which I send the chastisements. If then they don't give it a thought, neither will I have any regard for them. Having said this, he disappeared, leaving me in a sea of affliction and of tears. End of the reading.
The 16th of October, 1903, Volume 5. The divine will is light, and one who does it nourishes himself with light. As I was in my usual state, I was feeling all full of sins and of bitterness. Then he made himself seen like a flash in my interior, and I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little. However, in his presence the sins disappeared. Concerned, I said, my Lord, how is it that while in your presence I should know my sins better? It happens the opposite. And he, my daughter, my presence is sea without boundaries, and one who is in my presence is like a little drop. Whether it is black or white, it dissolves in my sea. So how can it be recognized any more? Moreover, my divine touch purges everything, and the black ones it turns into white. How can you fear then? Furthermore, my will is light, and by always doing my will, you nourish yourself with light, and your mortifications, privations, and sufferings convert into nourishment of light for the soul. In fact, the only food which is nourishing and gives true life is my will. And don't you know that this continuous nourishing herself with light, even if the soul should contract some defect, purges her continuously? Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading.
The 16th of October, 1905, Volume 6. The closer the soul draws to the love of God, the more she loses her own virtues. Having read a book which dealt with the virtues, I was concerned in looking at myself, for I could see no virtue in me. If it wasn't that I just want to love him, that I want him, that I love him, and that I want to be loved by blessed Jesus, nothing of God would exist in me. Now, as I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus told me, my daughter, the closer the soul comes to the end, so as to draw near the fount of every good, which is the true and perfect love of God, in which everything will remain submerged and love alone will float to be the engine of everything, the more she loses all the virtues she has practiced along the journey to enclose everything in love and rest from everything, to love only. Did the blessed in heaven not lose everything to love only? In the same way, the more she advances, the less she feels the varied crafting of the virtues, because investing them all, love converts them all into itself, keeping them at rest within itself, like many noble princesses, working itself alone and giving life to all of them. And while the soul does not perceive them, in love she finds them all but more beautiful, more pure, more perfect, more ennobled. And if she does perceive them, it is a sign that they are separated from love. For example, a soul receives a command and she exercises obedience to obey that person in order to acquire virtue, to sacrifice her own will, and for many other possible reasons. Now, by doing so, she already perceives that she is exercising obedience. She feels the toil, the sacrifice that this virtue brings with itself. Another then obeys, not to obey that person, nor for other reasons, but knowing that God would be displeased by her disobedience. She looks at God in the one who commands her, and for love of him, she sacrifices everything and obeys. In this, the soul does not perceive that she obeys, but only that she loves, because she has obeyed only out of love. Otherwise, she would have disobeyed anyway, and so with all the rest. Therefore, courage along the journey, because the more you move forward, the sooner you will enjoy in advance, also down here, the eternal beatitude of soul and true love. End of the reading.
The 16th of October 1906, Volume 7. How each good is a distinct melody in heaven. Having neglected to write what follows, obedience commanded me to do it. I seemed to be outside of myself, and it seemed that there was a special feast in heaven, and I was invited to this feast. It seemed I was singing with the very blessed, because up there is no need to learn, but one feels as though an infusion in one's interior, and whatever the others sing or do, one is able to do as well. Now, it seemed to me that each blessed is a key, that is, a melody himself. But all are in harmony among themselves, though each one is different from the other. One sings the notes of praise, one the notes of glory, one of thanksgiving, one of blessings. But all these notes reunite into one single note, and this note is love. It seems that one single voice reunites all those voices and ends with the word love. This cry, love, is such a sweet and strong resounding that all other voices remain as though extinguished in this canticle, love. It seemed that all the blessed were made ecstatic, drowsy, awake, inebriated by this cry or chant, love, high, harmonious, beautiful, which deafened the whole of heaven. They participate, one could say, in one more paradise. But who were the fortunate ones who cried out more loudly, who made this note love resound in everything, and who brought great happiness into heaven itself? They were the ones who had loved the Lord more when they lived on earth. They were not the ones who had done great things, penances, miracles. No, never. Love alone is what surpasses everything and leaves everything behind. So it is one who loves much, not one who does much, that will be more pleasing to the Lord. It seems I am speaking nonsense, but what can I do? It is obedience's fault. Who doesn't know that the things from up there cannot be spoken down here? So in order to not to speak any more nonsense, I stop here. End of the reading.
The 16th of October 1911, Volume 10. More threats of letting Italy be invaded by the foreigners, and Louisa becomes huffy with Jesus. This morning, my always lovable Jesus threatened strongly to let Italy be invaded by foreign people. And I, getting huffy with him, told him, "You really want to be impertinent. You say you love me, but you don't want to content me in anything. Bravo, Jesus. Is this the love you have for me?" And Jesus, "To show you that I love you, For love of you, I will spare your environment. Aren't you happy? And I, crying out loudly, No, Lord, you cannot do this. And Jesus, what is it? Are you becoming huffy? And I, yes, today I get huffy with you. And he disappeared. But I hope that he will placate himself. Then he seemed to be binding me so very tightly to himself in order to make me do his will. End of the reading.
The 16th of October, 1918, Volume 12. He predicts wars and the lot of some countries. I was feeling very afflicted because of the privation of my lovable Jesus, and my mind was made gloomy by the thought that everything in me had been a crafting either of my fantasy or of the enemy. There are rumours of peace and triumph for Italy, while I remembered that my sweet Jesus had told me that Italy would be humiliated. What pain, what mortal agony, to think that my life had been a continuous deceit. I felt that Jesus wanted to talk to me and I didn't want to listen. I rejected him. I fought for 3 days with Jesus, and many times I was so exhausted that I didn't have the strength to reject him. And then Jesus would speak and speak, and I, drawing strength from his speech, would say to him, I don't want to hear anything. Finally, Jesus placed his arm around my neck and said to me, calm down, it is I. Listen to me. Don't you remember that months ago when you were lamenting to me for poor Italy, I said to you, my daughter, those who win lose. Those who lose win. Italy and France have already been humiliated, and they will be no longer until they are purged and they return to me freely, voluntarily, and peacefully. In the merely apparent triumph which they enjoy, they already suffer the greatest humiliation. They did not do it by themselves, but a foreigner, not even European, came to drive the enemy away. So if this could be called a triumph, which it is not, it belongs to the foreigner. But this is nothing. Now more than ever, they lose more in moral things, as much as in the temporal, because this will dispose them to commit greater crimes, to fierce internal revolutions, such as to surpass the very tragedy of war. And then what I told you did not regard only the present times, but also the future, and all that is not happening now will happen then. And if someone will raise difficulties and doubts, it means that he knows little about my way of speaking. My speech is eternal, just as I am. Now I want to tell you something consoling. Italy and France now lose while Germany wins. All nations have some black stains, and all of them deserve humiliations and crushings. There will be a general uproar, confusion everywhere. I will renew the world with the sword, with fire and with water, with sudden deaths and with contagious diseases. I will make new things. The nations will form a sort of Tower of Babel. They reach the point of being unable to understand one another. The peoples will revolt among themselves. They will no longer want kings. All will be humiliated, and peace will come only from me. And if you hear them say peace, that will not be true but apparent. Once I have purged everything, I will place my finger in a surprising way, and I will give the true peace. Then all those who are humiliated will return to me. Germany will be Catholic. I have great designs upon her. England, Russia, and all the places where blood has been shed will rise again to faith and will be incorporated into my church. There will be great triumph and union among peoples. Therefore pray. And it takes patience because this will not be so soon, but it will take time. End of the reading.
16th of October, 1921, Volume 13. As Jesus was conceived, he made all creatures be reborn in him. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen, showing all creatures coming out from his most holy humanity. And all tenderness, he told me, "My daughter, look at the great prodigy of the incarnation. As I was conceived and my humanity was formed, I made all creatures be reborn in me. So in my humanity, as they were being reborn in me, I felt each one of their distinct acts. In my mind, I contained each thought of creature, both good and evil. The good ones I confirmed in good. I surrounded them with my grace. I invested them with my light, so that being reborn from the sanctity of my mind, they might be worthy parts of my intelligence. For the evil ones, then, I repaired, I made penance, I multiplied my thoughts to infinity in order to give to the Father the glory of each thought of creatures. In my gazes, in my words, in my hands, in my feet, and even in my heart, I contained the gazes, the words, the works, the steps, and the hearts of each one. And being reborn in me, everything remained confirmed in the sanctity of my humanity. Everything was repaired for, and for each offence I suffered a special pain. Then, having made all of them be reborn in me, I carried them with me through the whole course of my life. And do you know when I delivered them? I delivered them on the cross, on the bed of my bitter pains, among atrocious spasms in the last breath of my life. As I died, they were born again to new life, all sealed and marked with the whole work of my humanity. Not content with having given them new birth, I gave to each one everything I had done so as to keep them sheltered and safe. Do you see what sanctity man contains? The sanctity of my humanity, which could never bring to light unworthy children dissimilar from me. This is why I love man so much. He is a birth from me. But man is always ungrateful and reaches the point of not recognizing the Father who delivered him with so much love and pain. After this, he showed himself all in flames. Jesus was burnt and consumed in those flames and could no longer be seen. I could see nothing but fire. But then I saw him being reborn again to remain once again consumed in fire. Then he added, "My daughter, I am burning. Love consumes me. The flames that burn me are such that I die of love for each creature. It was not of pains alone that I died, but my deaths of love are continuous. Yet there is no one who gives me his love for refreshment." End of the reading.
The 16th of October 1923, Volume 16. So that the divine will may descend upon earth, the human will, emptied of all that is human, divinized and transformed into all that is God, must raise up to heaven and live and commune life with the most holy Trinity. He must take and give to all. The pain of the privation of my Jesus concentrates more and more into my poor heart. What long nights without him! They seem to be eternal nights without Jesus, without stars and without sun. The only thing left to me is his adorable will, in which I abandon myself, finding my rest in the thick darkness which surrounds me. Ah, Jesus, Jesus, come to my tormented heart, for I cannot go on without you. Now, while I was swimming in the immense sea of the pain of his privation, my Jesus moved in my interior, and taking my hands in his, pressed them tightly to his heart and told me, "My daughter, In order for my will to descend upon earth, it is necessary that your will raise up to heaven. And in order to raise up to heaven and to live in the celestial fatherland, it is necessary to empty it of all that is human, of all that is not holy, pure, and upright. Nothing can enter into heaven to live a communal life with us if it has not been completely divinized and transformed into us. Nor can my divine will descend upon earth and carry out its life as within its own centre if it does not find the human will emptied of everything, in order to fill it with all the goods which my will contains. It will be nothing other than a most thin veil, which will serve me to cover myself and to dwell within it, almost like a consecrated host in which I form my life, and I do all the good I want. I pray, I suffer, I enjoy, and the host does not oppose, he leaves me free. Its office is to be there to keep me hidden, and in mute silence to comply, to preserve my sacramental life. This is the point we are at. Your will is about to enter heaven, and mine is about to descend upon earth. Therefore yours must have life no longer. It must have no reason to exist. This happened to my humanity, which, though having a human will, was all intent on giving life to the divine will. It never decided by itself not even to breathe, but it took and gave also its breath in the divine will, and so the eternal will reigned in my humanity on earth as it does in heaven. It lived its terrestrial life in it, and my human will, fully sacrificed to the divine, impetrated that at the appropriate time it would descend upon earth to live in the midst of creatures, just as it lives in heaven. Don't you want to give my will the first place on earth? Now, while he was saying this, I seemed to find myself in heaven, and as though from one single point I could see all generations. And prostrating myself before the supreme majesty, I took the reciprocal love of the divine persons, their perfect adoration, the ever unique sanctity of their will, and I offered them, in the name of all, as the return of love, adoration, submission, and union, which every creature should give to her Creator. I wanted to unite heaven and earth, Creator and creature, that they might embrace and exchange the supreme kiss of the union of their wills. Then my Jesus added, "This is your task, to live in our midst and to make all that is ours your own, giving it to us on behalf of your brothers, so that drawn by what is ours, we may be bound to the human generations and give them the supreme kiss of the union of their wills to ours, which we gave to man in creation." End of the reading.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all.
The 16th of October 1927, Volume 23. How the Divine Will, like water, makes its inundations. Who the ones are who let themselves be inundated. What unity means. How the Queen of Heaven laid the foundations of the kingdom of the divine will. After I had gone through various days of privation of my sweet Jesus, I was feeling embittered deep into the marrow of my bones. I could take no more. And tired and exhausted, I wanted to refresh myself in order to gain strength. So I abandoned myself first in the supreme volition and then over myself, so as to be able at least to sleep. But while I was doing this, my mind was no longer inside of me, but outside of me. I felt two arms clasping me and taking me up high, very high, under the vault of the heavens, but I could not see who it was. I feared, and a voice told me, "Do not fear, but look up high." I looked, and I saw heaven open, and my longed-for Jesus descend toward me. We both flung into each other's arms, I clasping him, and he clasping me. And in my sorrow I said to him, "Jesus, my love, how you make me struggle. You make me reach the extremes. It shows how the ardour of your love for me is no longer what you had for me before." Now, while I was saying this, Jesus took an attitude of sadness, as if he did not want to hear my laments. And at the same time, from the height we were at, I saw a pouring water descend, and many places were inundated. Seas and rivers united themselves to these waters and inundated towns and people, bearing them into their bosom. What terror! And Jesus, all afflicted, told me, "My daughter, just as you see these waters that descend from heaven in torrents and inundating form with their strength the sepulchres in which to bury entire cities, so does my divine will more than water make its inundations, not in certain times or places, but always and over the whole earth, pouring its strong and high inundations over each creature. But who lets himself be inundated by its inundations of light, of grace, of love, of sanctity, and of happiness that it possesses? No one. What ingratitude! To receive its goods in torrents and not to take them, to pass over them, maybe just getting wet, but not to let oneself be inundated and drowned by the goods of my divine will. What sorrow! And I look at the whole earth to see who takes the inundations of my will, and I find only the little daughter of my will, receiving these inundations, drowning in it, and letting herself be transported wherever it wants, remaining in its bosom, prey to its gigantic waves. There is no sight more beautiful, no scene more touching, than to see the littleness of the creature prey to these waves. She can be seen now prey to waves of light, and though buried inside of them, now drowned by love, now invested and embellished by sanctity. What a delight to see her! And this is why I descend from heaven, to enjoy these enrapturing scenes of your littleness, carried by its arms in the inundations of my eternal volition. And you say that my love for you has declined? You are wrong. Know that your Jesus is faithful in love, and as he sees you under the waves of his will, he loves you more and more. Having said this, he disappeared, and I remained all abandoned in the waves of the divine fiat. Then coming back, my lovable Jesus added, "My daughter, my will possesses the unity, and one who lives in it lives in this unity. And do you know what unity means? It means one, a one that can embrace everything and everyone, and can give everything, because it encloses everything. My divine will possesses the unity of love and of all loves united together. It possesses the unity of sanctity and encloses all sanctities. It possesses the unity of beauty and encloses within itself everything beautiful that is possible and imaginable. In sum, it encloses the unity of light, of power, of goodness, of wisdom. True and perfect unity, while being one, must possess everything, and this everything must be all of an equal strength, all immense and infinite, eternal, without beginning and without end. Therefore, one who lives in it lives within the immense and gigantic waves it possesses, in such a way that the soul feels the empire of the one strength of light, of sanctity, of love, etc. So, in this one strength, everything is light for her. Everything changes into sanctity, into love, into power, and all things bring her the knowledge of the wisdom of this unity. Therefore, to live in it is the greatest miracle and the perfect carrying out of the divine life in the creature. The word unity means everything, and the soul takes everything by living in it. After this, I continued my round in the acts of the divine fiat, and as I arrived at the seas of the celestial Mama that she had formed in the unity of it, I thought to myself, my sovereign Mama did not have the interest of impetrating the kingdom of the divine will, because if she had had it in this unity in which she lived, just as she obtained the kingdom of redemption, she would have obtained that of the divine will. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, to all appearances, it may seem that the whole interest of our Queen Mama was for the kingdom of redemption, but it is not true. That was the external part, but the interior was all for the kingdom of my divine will. In fact, she who knew all the value of it, and the complete glory for her Creator, and the maximum and complete good for creatures, could not do without asking for the kingdom of the eternal fiat. On the contrary, by obtaining the redemption, she laid the foundations of the kingdom of my will. It can be said that she prepared the materials for it. It is necessary to do minor things in order to obtain greater ones. And this is why I had to give the first field to redemption, almost to build the factory of the kingdom of the divine fiat. If a kingdom is not formed, how can a king say that he has his kingdom and that he dominates? More so, since the sovereign Queen of Heaven is the only and sole one in the celestial fatherland, because as the only and sole one, she formed her whole life in my will, and a mother loves and wants for her children to possess her same glory. And she in heaven cannot communicate all her glory and greatness and sovereignty that she possesses, because she does not find anyone who has lived her same continuous life in the divine will. Therefore she longs for the children of its kingdom, so as to have all her glory be reflected in them, and be able to say, I have my children who equal me in my glory. Now I am happier, because my glory is the same glory as my children's. The happiness of a mother is more that of her children than of her own. More so for the celestial mother, who in my will, more than mother, conceived all the redeemed ones, and formed the very life of the children of my divine will. End of the reading. The 16th of October, 1932, Volume 31. The divine will forms of all the centuries one alone. It simplifies, forms the void, and forms the divine nature and its walk in the human will. The divine volition always goes weaving its divine life in my soul. With its sweet enchantment it makes it grow, moulds it, nourishes it, and with its wings of light cover it and hide it, so that not one breath of wind can harm it or could impede the growth of its life in my soul. Oh, if it were not for the divine will that more than a tender and loving mother holds me in its arms, covered with its light in the circumstances of my life, alas too sorrowful, I do not know what I would do. But Its light calms me, strengthens me, and draws me on. Oh, adorable will, how much I must thank you for such a good, and I offer you the infinity of your own volition and I offer you the infinity of your own volition in order to thank you as you deserve. So, while my mind felt itself under its light, my beloved Jesus, repeating his brief little visit to my soul, told me, "My blessed daughter, how beautiful it is to see the creature growing under the wings of light of my will. Enveloped in this light, she neither sees, nor hears, nor touches anything but her mother's light that keeps her wrapped up. And if creatures wound her, beat her, embitter her, she feels more squeezed and clasped to its arms of light, and responds with a smile of light to whoever wants to embitter and wound her, and joking with them, she confounds their human perfidy. O power of my operating will, it slips away from all, triumphs over all, and with its light forms its throne of immortal glory in the soul who gives it the freedom to operate. You must know that its power is so great that it forms of all centuries one alone, and its empire extends everywhere, and of all acts it forms one single act. The centuries disappear before its power, and all the good acts of creatures are nothing other than so many atoms that, united together, form one single act in which they recognize its power, and prostrate at its feet, they form the glory and the adoration of the human generations to this supreme will. A symbol of this is the sun, that is nothing other than so many atoms of light that united together form the sun that gives light all over the earth. But those atoms are armed with a divine power, and each one contains a marvelous power, so much so that only by touching the earth the plants communicate such marvelous goods and effects so as to form a distinct life in each plant and flower. The same for the acts of creatures. Although they are atoms, they contain the marvelous power of my will. Therefore they are pregnant with admirable effects. You must know that when the creature disposes herself to do an act in my will, it arms its power and simplifies, forms the void, and forms divine nature in the human will. And as victorious, it forms its way in the will of the creature, and it always walks, and then it stops, and its step is impeded when the human will places the bars by not doing mine, but her own will. What a crime to impede the walk, the step of my volition, in the will of the creature, since I created creatures in order to form for myself many ways in the human wills, to be able to have my continuous walk, and therefore my operating act in them. And the one who impedes my walk, would want to impede me in the continuation of my creation, to block my steps and tie my hands so that I would not be able to operate. Alas, not doing my will seems to be nothing, and yet it is the greatest of crimes that before the divine majesty cries out vengeance toward poor creatures, especially when it is known that my will does a work, that it wants a sacrifice, and not doing it is as if one wanted to contest the truth. And this is a sin against the Holy Spirit, and cries out for vengeance before God. To know my will and not do it is to close heaven, to break the divine relations, and to not know the divine command that every creature is obligated to know and to submit to what my volition wants, even though it might cost them their life. Therefore be attentive, adore my will and what it has disposed for you, if you want to content your Jesus. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.